Okay, hello. My name is Roland Graf. I'm a media artist and designer and professor at the STEM School of Art and Design, and like Luke said, I will co-present this paper with Pallavi Benawri, who has graduated from the School of Information this summer. As you can see on the authors list, we represent a larger team. We are 3 faculty and 4 students from 4 different schools at the University of Michigan. And I want to emphasize that all of us have been very committed to work on this project together. So I'll start and then hand over to Pallavi in a few minutes. To provide the context for our study, I want to briefly explain what inspired and motivated what we are presenting today. As a media artist and designer, I've been collaborating for many years on a variety of interactive installations with engineers, and most of them, like Solar Ping Pong, the installation in this video clip that I'm going to show, reframe the body and interactivity in the built environment.
What are you doing? Look at this shit. It's a Pong game. Look. Oh, that's off.
So we showed this installation at different venues around the world and received a lot of interesting feedback. And long story short, we ended up in a customer discovery program in which we explored the potential of this technology to get to the market in some form. And one of the feedback that we received came from an 11-year-old boy who was very interested in Solar Ping Pong from a sport perspective, but as a user of a power wheelchair, he could not access it in the same way as the pedestrians that you saw in the video. And this feedback inspired us to shift the focus of our further project development to the design space of inclusive play and exercise. And in this space, we noticed that there's quite a big gap between research on accessible exergames and adaptive sports. And our design goal was to overcome or to combine as much as possible the benefits of both worlds. So the main contribution that we developed and present here today is an interactive floor projection system that we call iGYM, I for inclusive play. And our current implementation of this system is an air hockey-inspired multiplayer game. So at the core of this system, 2 design elements that I have to explain. The first is peripersonal circle interaction. This is a projected circle on the floor, visualizing the player's peripersonal space boundaries, which is the immediate space surrounding the player's bodies. And with this circle, players can manipulate a virtual target on the floor by body movement or limb extension. So, for example, if I extend my arms or my feet, the circle expands correspondingly. And this actually feels quite similar to the body and shadow play of Solar Ping Pong. But unlike in Solar Ping Pong, players also have the option to press a kick button to simulate arm or feet extension and manipulate the target in that way. Here you see our kick button prototype. It comes with switches with different form factors that can be body mounted on different positions. And the second design element is adjustable game mechanics that uses physics simulation to create a realistic ball game environment. In this element also allows balancing players' individual differences in response time or mobility by controlling parameters in such a way that, such as the circle size and the target speed of the virtual book. And when we built the system, we tested it first among our research team members, and then conducted pilot play tests. So during this pilot, we tested different parameters, actually many different parameters, including the target speed, the playfield friction, the playfield boundary elasticity, which is how fast the target bounces back. However, we saw that the speed parameter adjustments, such as slowing down or increasing the target speed for each player or playfield side individually, seemed to disrupt the game's flow and was less effective as a player balancing approach compared to the effects of adjusting the circle size. And that's why we then decided to focus our study on peripersonal circle adjustments using 3 adaptation levels that Pallavi will explain.
So as Roland said, we defined 3 adaptation levels for the study to isolate the effects of different elements in the game. In the first adaptation level, all players were given peripersonal circles to hit the virtual target. In the second adaptation level, players could still use the peripersonal circles similar to the first level, but in addition, we also provided a kick button to all the players with mobility disabilities. And now by clicking this button, they could expand their circles and now hit the virtual target. Further adding on to the first 2 levels, in the third adaptation level, players were given the peripersonal circle, the kick button, and in addition, a balancing model that defined the size of the circle or the reach advantage of the players based on performance in single-player rounds. So all of these adaptation levels and the study design were centered around 4 main research questions that we wanted to address with this study. First, we wanted to know how players perceived the game and the nature and benefit of the game itself. Next, we wanted to uncover player opinions about the kick button. We hypothesized that players using wheelchairs might feel an unfair disadvantage when they are playing without the kick button. We also wanted to find out which adaptation level players preferred the most and hypothesized that adaptation level 3, that is the one with the kick button and the balancing model, would be most preferred. And finally, we wanted to understand how players with different abilities felt about playing with each other in a sports setting. To answer all of these questions, we recruited 12 participants and paired them up in different constellations. Our selection criteria for these participants was that they are able to see, hear, and have enough response capability to understand and play the game. We had 3 5-minute matches per pair, so there was 1 match for each adaptation level, and we also had a 4-minute single-player round. This is what our study procedure looked like. Participants and their parents first completed assent forms and a pre-study questionnaire, followed by a system demonstration. Our team observed player movement and strategy throughout the gameplay and provided questionnaires after each match. At the end, we conducted semi-structured interviews with each player, and for analysis, we drew parallels between performance, observations, and the interview and questionnaire data. There were a lot of interesting findings from our study. First of all, we heard a lot of comparisons of iGYM to sports such as soccer, hockey, and air hockey, with one player even exclaiming that they were like the hitter thing in air hockey. However, what players really liked about iGYM compared to some other adaptive sports was that it could be played without any additional equipment. The game was also considered competitive, fast-paced, strategic, and fun overall. Most players said that the kick button that they used was a good equalizer and provided a lot more comfort and control while gameplay. And as hypothesized, the condition C3, that is the one with the kick button and the balancing model both, was the most preferred out of all 3 conditions, chosen by 5 out of 12 players. But surprisingly, the next highest preferred condition was C1, which only had the peripersonal circle and not the kick button, because 4 players said that they liked the challenge of playing without a kick button. Overall, participants said that they enjoyed playing against people with different abilities because they mentioned that they don't usually get to do that in a regular setting in daily life. Now I'll hand over back to Roland to talk about some key takeaways from the study.
I can see the timekeeper is already here. So very quickly, these are some of the takeaways that we think are key for the design of an inclusive system in our setting. Pallavi already mentioned that the multifactorial player preferences. One of the unexpected findings also is that basically if adaptation equipment is too disability specific, it can also be seen as a barrier to inclusive play. And particularly related to our system design, the significance of the peripersonal circle seems to go beyond usability concerns. It also provided an equal representation of the players on the playfield. So to conclude, based on our study, we think that the system design of iGYM opens up a new, exciting space of inclusive play that has a lot of potential. But having said that, to study inclusive play, we are aware that we have to address the player experience much more holistically, and particularly the social play setting around it. Here you see some examples that we observed once the study was completed. It prompted matches of 4 or more players, children playing with their parents, and players participating with other mobility aids and wheelchairs, such as crouches, for example. Our primary goal with this project is to further develop it as a system and bring it from the lab to the field and eventually to the market. So if you're interested to join us or know anybody that would support this mission, please let us know. Thank you.
All right. All right. We have time for a couple of questions in the back there. Last row.
Hi, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. I was wondering, have you
sorry, you are, can you say your name?
Oh yeah, sure. I'm Dees Postma from the Netherlands, University of Twente.
Thanks.
I was wondering if you have looked at the stigmas around the peripersonal circle, because I can imagine that people with disabilities might find it stigmatizing to have a large peripersonal circle, or is that not something that is...
So actually the circle is the same, the size doesn't, I mean, we did a lot of tests, and at least in our studies we didn't get any feedback, and also in our research about potential stigmas. We actually had a different impression that it was providing like the same input modality, and the feedback we got from the players, particularly those using mobility aids, was when they compared it, for example, to adaptive sport, that it seemed more inclusive. Basically, it's not this kind of equipment that limits other people to step in and play. So it's a good point. So far, we have not heard anything in this direction. Yeah.
So it was not an issue.
It didn't come up, and again, the size of the circle is not doesn't correlate necessarily with the mobility aid or with body sizes, for example. It's the minimum size of it when players step on the playfield is bigger than your body and than the average wheelchair.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Other questions? Yes, few rows before.
Hi, I'm Katja Spiel. I'm with KU Leuven and Universität Wien. Congrats to the best paper. That's well deserved.
Thank you.
But I saw that you mentioned that a non-disability specific play setting is important for inclusive play. And I would like to just trouble that a little bit, because I mean, that can mean different things. You were very much on adapters, but I think you can probably think of options for sharing experiences in play that might be centered on like disabled ways of knowing and being in the world.
I think it might be a consequence. We had to boil it down in bullet points, and maybe that was too simplistic. What